Why hello ladies and gents, we are back in the workshop and it's time to mix some epoxy and iron powder. So we've got our mold here ready to be poured. We've got this little cylindrical piece that I 3D printed to help keep this space constant because our print that's only one layer thick is a little bit flexible and we don't want the weight of the epoxy and iron to whatever. So thanks to SolidWorks, we know that the volume of the entire mold is 377,921 millimeters cubed. Now I need to convert that to an understandable language for your average American. So because my mixing cup is only focused, god damn it, because my mixing cups only uses these weird units that I don't understand, so I gotta do some Googling on the Googles. 377,921 millimeters cubed to let's do maybe milliliters, I guess. So that would mean my total volume is 378 cubic milliliters. Now that's the volume of the entire mold, including like the walls and the borders and everything. So there's room to play around with. So 350 is probably just the perfect amount. So I'm gonna make my total like mixtures just about or just more than 350 milliliters to get it to fill exactly to the top. So I did the quick maths, so you don't have to go through that painstaking process with me. So we need 227 milliliters of iron powder, and we need 151 milliliters of epoxy. Now the epoxy is a ratio of 2 to 1, so I gotta find out the milliliters of each of those I need to mix into the same vat, basically. Okay, and a little bit of simple 5th grade math later, we can figure out that we need 100.6 milliliters of part A, or the resin, and we need 50.3 milliliters of part B, the hardener for the epoxy. So I'm going to measure each one of these out, I'm going to put iron powder in this first, and then pour it into the mixing container. And then I'm going to put the resin in here, pour that into the final mixing container, and then measure off the hardener, and then pour that in, get my drill ready with my little mixing bit, and then mix it all together until it has a consistency of about pudding, and then comes the really fun part where I get to pour it in and not drip it anywhere but inside the mold. Time for things to get a little messy. Let me make sure I'm still in frame here. Yeah, so this is going to get mixed together now. And then once this is somewhat or close to being mixed together, I'm going to mix in the hardener and mix that all around, and then we have a fun time. Man, imagine if I had to do this by hand. That'd suck. I'm starting to think that's pretty mixed. I'm going to stick my spatula in it and make sure that all the iron, the powdered iron from the bottom, has been mixed in. Probably should have added the iron in last, but since I'm not the smartest person alive, well, things to do next time. Wow, this stuff is gnarly. Look at that. This is going to take forever to pour into that mold. But I think all the iron from the bottom is now in the epoxy. Let's see, does a magnet stick? Oh, yes it does. Look at that. You can see how magnetic it is. So that's good. Stronger than the iron mixed into the PLA, which is what I had my motor stator made out of last time. So this is going to improve my motor's performance at least tenfold. So this is going to be amazing. Still not as great as like steel laminations or amorphous iron or whatever those fancy hooligans are using up in the expensive, you know, research development laboratories, whatever. But hey, better than the small amount of iron mixed into that plastic. So I'll be happy with anything. I think this is fully mixed, so I think this is going to be ready to pour. Okay, I guess here we go. Okay, here we got the mold. We got a little lighting set up. Here is our iron paste. We're going to do our best to slowly pour it in the edges, and hopefully it flows into all the nooks and crannies. If it doesn't, then I'm fucked. But here, I guess we'll go very slowly. Oh shoot, how am I gonna do this? This is totally going to flow over the... Well, I did print a part to try and prevent this. I'm not sure if it's actually going to do anything. I printed this little doodad that would block off all the channels, or attempts to, so I can pour my epoxy stuff in, but it's kind of bent. It's not very, it doesn't sit flat. I just don't think this is going to work very well. Maybe I should still try it anyways. Because if I don't do this, then the epoxy is going to go in between the teeth, and that's not good. maybe this mixture is just a little too thick, so oh well. Oh god, this is awful. This is very bad. Very, very bad. I can add a little more hardener in and maybe make this a little more viscous. Okay, I added just a little bit extra hardener and made the mixture just a little bit more pourable. So I should be able to do it now. It's still this is still going to be tough. This is very tough. Oh god. Alright, so I've got epoxy in all of the channels now, well, in all of the teeth and stuff. What I'm doing now is I'm doing my best to scrape what has dripped through my little protector in between the teeth, so I'm trying to save that space for copper wire. If there's any paste outside the teeth, it's really not the end of the world. But it does take away, or it will make winding this motor a little bit harder. So I'm doing my best to try and get all that paste out, and then putting it back in the mold itself. I just barely had enough paste to fill this motor. I should have made myself a little extra. But it appears to me like the paste is working its way down into the motor, which is a good thing because I can see air bubbles coming through. It also might be from the epoxy setting as well. So I'm just trying to be careful not to push too hard and cause more epoxy to spill over. Okay, epoxy has been scraped off the sides and have been put in their respective places. The epoxy is now going to set, but there's two last things we need to do. This little piece that's going to keep the center perfectly cylindrical and straight was accidentally my weight to hold that plastic piece down. So let's get the epoxy off of that, and then that's going to sit in the teeth to keep the motor from shifting or moving while the epoxy sets. Oh great, now it's on my hands. Alright, this is eventually going in the middle. Come on. See, it's not very straight right now, so that's why I made this piece. Well, if I can't get this in, then I can't. How am I supposed to get the rotor in when this thing dries? Oh, come on. This is gonna be a little fussy to. Oh, there we go. There we go. Now our mold's gonna set around that, and there's one part to top this all off. Hopefully this settles back down because it's expanding just a little bit due to the air bubbles being generated by the drying epoxy. Yeah, it looks like it's sticking up pretty good. I wonder if I can actually take care of that with a paper towel. Probably not. Yeah, no, it's just gonna wipe it right back into the holes I just cleaned out. So let's Control Z that thing. Control Z that decision. And you know, actually, I was gonna put a cap on this to make winding a little bit easier, like to round off all those corners that copper wire is gonna wrap around. But given this bubbly like formation right now and how the edges of the teeth and stuff are already rounded over and stuff with the expanding epoxy, I'm gonna leave it like this, because this is actually doing what this cap's job was supposed to do. So I don't actually need to do that. Now I let this thing set overnight, and we'll see how it came out in the morning.